Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Claire Manning from Thirsty Brush and I'm going to show you some easy stamping and die cutting techniques today, hopefully to make things a little bit easier for you if you're struggling with stamping or coordinating die cutting. So I'm going to use this vintage carnation stamp set. It's one of our earlier designs from Thirsty Brush, but it's one that I reach for again and again. But first, before we do that stamp, I'm going to create a background with the Starburst die. So again, this is a super popular die. It's like a panel die and it cuts out this lovely starburst detail, and I'm going to layer some holographic card underneath this navy card here. So I'm going to cut out the die. It's a 5x7 die, so it fits perfectly, or just smaller than 5x7, sorry. Fits perfectly on your 5x7 cards, or if you want to mat and layer up, you can use it on your A5s as well. So here it is cut out of that lovely navy blue, and you can see it's done all that lovely detail, just a couple of tiny bits for me to poke out with my pokey tool, and there's the die cut out. Let's layer it then with that holographic card. So here's my 5x7 card blank, and I've pre-cut a piece of holographic and I'm going to layer that underneath, and you can see then you get that lovely kind of fireworky starburst detail on there. So this works really nicely with glitter cards, metallic cards, but you can use whatever you like. So just using a bit of double-sided tape to pop that onto my card blank. I'm doing it flat on this card here. If you want to use foam pads or a piece of foam cut like I do in a lot of my cards to raise it up a bit, that's absolutely fine. It's totally up to you. This is actually a great way of using, if you've ever got any metallic card lying around that's got maybe some scratches or some knocks on it. It happens sometimes, doesn't it? It's a great way of using that up, because you will not notice anything like that once this layer cover die is on top, but you're still going to get that lovely effect of something shiny coming through those little gaps. So I'm putting the die cut piece on top with some wet glue, and I'm just keeping my wet glue mainly around the edge and a tiny bit in the middle, well away from those die cut pieces so it doesn't squeege through. So just layer that on top. And it's a really simple technique. I mean, I've made cards before, and so have my design team, with literally just this die and a sentiment on, and that's enough, especially like if you've got a card for a teenager or a guy to make. But let's do some die cutting and stamping with these coordinating sets as well. I'm going to layer this on top. So this is a huge vintage sketchy carnation that I drew a long time ago, well before I was even doing stamps and dies. So this is a piece of artwork that I had in a drawer somewhere for a long time, and we're going to use the coordinating outline die and the sentiment die for the hooray. So what I'm going to try and do is show you a easy way to do your outline die cutting. If you struggle with stamping first and then getting that die cut exactly lined up, I mean, it's not too bad when you've got an open die like this, but when you've got like a solid die where you can't see your lines, like that sentiment one there, it can be quite difficult. So there's no right or wrong. I mainly stamp first and then die cut, but I want to show you this technique and the other way around, and then you can play around and see what works best for you. So in this situation, I'm die cutting everything I want first. So I'm going to stamp onto the white card. So I've got the outline die, the sentiment die on the navy, and the matte layer for the sentiment in white. So I've done all my die cutting, no stamping at all yet. So get your Eureka or your stamping tool, whatever it is you're using. You could do this with acrylic blocks too, but I obviously recommend using the stamping tool because then you can go in as many times as you need. So remove your die and take out the die cut pieces. just pop those aside, and first part of this is to use the negative. So you're going to need some masking tape. I wouldn't use your washies for this because they are a little bit too low tack. You need something that's going to peel off, but you don't want it so low tack that this all falls apart. So turn your piece of card over, the negative, and put on the back some low tack tape. So the reason I'm saying this is that if you've ever gone to die cut first and then stamp on, you've got no room to put your magnets or anything. So doing it this way is you put the negative on with the low tack tape, put it into your stamping tool. It's just moved a little bit there. So slot your piece back in. Just give it a wiggle and get it right in there, back exactly where it was. And that low tack tape isn't going to spoil the back of your design at all. You're going to be able to peel it off. The sentiment one, if you want, that's my matte layer. I'm not stamping onto that sentiment, so I'm actually going to keep that aside. And then grab your stamp. So this is this huge carnation stamp, and then position that. Take as much time as you need now to position it and get it perfect. Close your door as you normally do and ink up as you normally do. I'm using a super light ink pad here today because I want to kind of lose some of the lines once I do my colouring. But this is great when you want to stamp with the blacks or the greys, or you want to heat emboss and you want to make sure that stamp image is absolutely spot on within that die cut. It happens, doesn't it, that we've all die cut it after and then it slips. In fact, we talked about it a little bit on a mistakes video I did earlier in the week. So now that is absolutely perfectly stamped on there. You just turn back over and get rid of that masking tape or that low tack tape. So you will see many videos from me where I stamp first, then die cut. But I thought, if we, not everybody does. A lot of people like to do it the other way around, but this is a way to do it the other way around and make sure you get it spot on by putting it back in the negative. So let's have a look at that again, that same technique, but using the sentiment. So I've die cut, I've put the negative on there, held securely with my magnets. I've put the die cut element back in with some low tack tape on the back, and then I'm going in to stamp. So it's absolutely perfect. Look, this is going to be heat embossed, so I'm using the Luminosity embossing ink. So it doesn't matter whether you're using inks or embossing, whatever you need to do for your stamping. What's really good with your embossing here is that I've got an extra piece of card now to hold on to, so I'm not burning my fingers and trying to hold that tiny sentiment with no, it's only got a 1mm gap on it, so that can be difficult to hold if you haven't got any tweezers or anything like that to hand. So the sentiment is in Stamped on Navy, Luminosity embossing ink and Silver Lining embossing powder from our Luminosity range. Just heat setting that to make it that lovely smooth silver, shiny. And that one says hooray. And then same as before, just turn it over then and remove the low tack tape and you've got a lovely sentiment. I'm going to glue that onto the matte layer. So you get both that outline and the matte layer in a lot of our sentiments. Lots of people do these now. So that's my card blank done with the background on, and that's my sentiment done. So let's go back to our stamped image now and add some colour. So I'm sorry it was so bright in my room today and I've used such a light ink. It hasn't really showed up too much the stamped image for you. But if you want to see more stamping and colouring and things like that, this video wasn't particularly about the stamping and the colouring as such. It was about stamping and using your coordinating die cuts. So there's tons of videos if you go on the playlists, there's tons of videos for colouring and stamping and colouring images in various different mediums, alcohol inks, water-based inks, and pens. I want to do some more with pencils as well. I know a lot of you have got pencils at home. I use paints. So as I say, this is really sped up, and it's really, the lighting really is a bit rubbish, I'm sorry. But do check out my other videos if you want to see more detailed tutorials on the colouring side of things. So just some peaches and some greens, which are my favourite colours to do these carnations in. So I made a watercolour wash out the pens, and then I just go back in, I've dried it off, and then go back in with the pens and added a tiny bit of detail. People always ask me about these pens. They are the Co-Ordinating Zig Clean Colour Brush pens. That's a mouthful, isn't it? We do stock them in our store in Birmingham, if anybody's interested in them, but that people always ask because they can be used in so many different ways. So that's our flower coloured up. So now let's go back to our starburst, and I just want to decide before I stick down, so we always have a play with any die cuts or stamped images before I put the glue on, and kind of make a mental decision about where I'm going to add it, because you do get a bit of wiggle room with wet glue, but you know, it can be difficult if you decide after a couple of seconds of putting it on that you want to move it and it wasn't quite right. So I'm going to pop it smack bang in the middle, and it's going to look like that starburst is coming out from behind that beautiful flower then. And then I'm going to pop the sentiment straight across the middle as well. So we've got a really bold background and a really kind of vintagey, watercolory flower on the top there, and then complemented again with a bold, darker sentiment. So do try out that technique as well with your stamping and die cutting, whether you do the stamp first and then die cut after, like I normally do in my other videos, or whether you try this technique that I've showed you today. It's not new, tons of people do it this way as well, and like I say, there is no right or wrong. You do what works for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. I added some gems on the end there, and I've got a picture that I took as well, but you can see the colours a little better just coming up. While you're here, do check out my other videos. Leave me a comment below and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I will see you next time.